also it's important to improve transport practices and technologies to move toward, for example, car sharing, as well as more energy efficient technology. Only combination of these different measures could help us to solve the problems in the transport sector. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Professor, with the conference about the advantages and challenges to alternative fuels to transport sector in the future. Very interesting. We will continue it now with Dr. Machet. Okay, you can take off. Dr. Amelia, you can take off your presentation.
I'm trying to do this, but sorry.
In your computer in the...
Okay, so, okay.
Here, you can...
Is this? Sorry.
Can you...
No, it's blocked.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we will continue with Dr. Machet with the conference entitled The Future of Artificial Intelligence in the Energy Sector. Dr. Machet is a visiting researcher at the University of Tokyo, graduate of public policy. He has experience in energy law and energy sector. Dr. Machet, thank you for being here, and you can begin.
Good evening. Greetings from Japan. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to be here with you and talk a while about artificial intelligence, AI, something very trendy right now and noticeable as the new initiative on AI law. So my name is Maciej Sokolowski, and as I was introduced here, I'm a visiting researcher at the University of Tokyo. And I noticed a small mistake in the program, as my humble surname was mispronounced. So that's the Maciej Solokowski and Han Solo. Yeah. So maybe this Star Wars mood made it. In fact, I'm Sokolowski, a slight difference, but it's not a big deal. So as in the Star Wars, same in Japan, those robots are a very common topic, very covered also by the legislation, by the strategies. And this approach to AI combined with energy, with electricity, appears also in different parts of the world, also in the European Union, where you can find the strategy on AI from 2018, where there's a catchy quote, electricity like a steam engine in the past, and now AI is transforming our world, society, and our industry. And making a loop here, AI is also changing the electricity sector, is also changing the energy, which is one of the components, one of the parts of the strategy addressed, let's say, in more general way than other things. And the same happens also with the last presentation, the recent proposal on the AI law in the European Union. So defining artificial intelligence in the EU as proposed in the strategy, different systems that display intelligent behavior, where the analyzing their environment, taking actions appears to achieve a specific goal. So this combined with the deep learning, this combined with such applications as autonomous cars, vehicles, also electric vehicles, Internet of Things, advanced robots. So we have a broad range of different AI applications, different AI technologies, and the preferable approach is rather not to define it in a very direct way, but rather use this broad approach where it's very hard to follow these new developments that appear in this world of technologies, in this world of this modern applications. So the broader approach is preferable. And when it comes to AI, we can distinguish different categories. As World Economic Forum proposed, it can be automated intelligence, assisted intelligence, augmented intelligence, and autonomous intelligence. And I have also some examples here that refer to energy sector. So for instance, automated intelligence system can be a robot that can learn to sort recycled materials for needs of household, for instance, for needs of the power station, also for needs of supporting the people who work in the power installation when it comes to the fuel that is used. But also it can be a robot that is used, or robots rather, that are used in Japan in the Fukushima power plant. I was there 2 months ago, and they have about 100 robots that are used there, and they represent those type of intelligence system. That can be also assistant intelligence system, very useful when it comes to the climate mitigation, for instance, those all systems that can help, that can support with weather events, hurricanes, all those negative consequences of climate change. We also have the augmented intelligence system, so AI that can enable to examine different scenarios involving climate policy, greenhouse gas emissions. So tools that can be given to policymakers, the governments, to help, or also to the utilities, to the power system companies, transmission system operators, to help them to apply the policy making tools, the regulatory tools in their everyday operation. And we have also autonomous intelligence system. So for instance, it can be a smart home, so heating, ventilation, cooling, also used to save owners money. Yeah, so is this combined with energy efficiency? So as we see, and as I mentioned, we have different types of applications that are used right now in the energy sector. And the thing is whether those approaches are noticed by the legislation, noticed by the policymakers, and included in different strategies, in different programs for the needs of just transition, for the needs of energy policy, as we noticed that energy efficiency is a very important element of the energy transition worldwide. Energy efficiency first, according to different European strategies, and why not to apply, to give that possibility for artificial intelligence to be used in the more direct way. So here's the timeline of the European Union's action that could be combined with the Japan's G7 presidency, when this topic was put on the table by Japan and then followed by other colleagues. Of course, these approaches are a little bit different, as I said at the very beginning, because Japan is rather driven by the hardware, so the robotics, while the worldwide, even in China, there's more let's say open approach to software, so different applications like a deep learning, etc. It's a very old approach. This Japanese very old approach combined with those inventions and Japanese technologies used for the production needs. So Japan is a producing country, also offering technologies for the needs of the AI, mainly the robotics. But coming to this issue, what we can observe is that in different policy statements, the European Union acknowledged the promotion of AI in different technologies to help to solve global challenges, support implementation of Paris Climate Agreement, achieve sustainable development goals. So we notice this general declaration, but we do not see concrete steps towards this usage of AI that could be included in different types of regulations, in different types of legislation, with some exceptions. like smart metering, for instance, or that still it comes or the technologies, AI technologies, different solutions are offered by the industry to these individuals, but we do not observe AI included in the strategies in this current framework of, for instance, of a Green Deal as a tool for reaching this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals or Paris Agreement goals or energy transition or energy agenda. In my opinion, it should be clearly underlined and emphasized. Yes. So artificial intelligence for Europe, what we observe, and this is very interesting because this is the similar approach to different technologies that appear or to different elements of a policy framework. If you take a look, for instance, at the developments in energy saving in 70s or in 80s, European Union had such a programs as Save, Joule, Thermi. At the very beginning, there was the money that was offered for research and development, and then there was the regulatory approach with some goals, for instance, to be reached. Sometimes these goals disappeared, for instance, like the goal for combined heat and power that disappeared after being announced in the late 90s. It simply disappeared just because, or other are continued, like the goals for energy efficiency or renewables or reduction of emissions. Yes. So what we observe here is the money that is offered in this multi-annual financial framework for such activities as energy and data efficiency. So this is the first approach to AI that could be and will be rather regulated. So energy efficiency in use of AI applications and use of even robotics, in my opinion. It should be clearly regulated that the robots should be energy efficient devices. Same comes to usage of AI. Same comes to usage of big data, the servers used for this needs. So we have this approach that is combined with energy efficiency. That what I'm going to tell later, in my opinion, it should be also clearly stated that this energy used by the different applications of AI should be clear energy, should be clean energy, should be the renewable energy. So it should, we observe right now, we have a big development of artificial intelligence. And in my opinion, and that's the thing, that's the goal also of this presentation, is to address that the development of artificial intelligence must be clean and green. And this is the moment to do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, we won't catch this development, and then we're going to have the same problem that we have with the energy sector itself. So at the very beginning, we should clearly make these borderlines. Otherwise, it's pointless. Yeah. Otherwise, Empire Strikes Back, using this Star Wars comparison again. Let's say. So we have this energy efficiency approach, and that's the framework offered by the European Union in the strategy. And as we can observe, we have this environmental well-being. So it's a clear gateway for AI to be developed in this way, in this climate-friendly way, where renewables and energy efficiency are applied in this development. We have a transparency. Transparency, as I said, is covered. It's covered by the general regulation that gives at least some possibilities to be informed, for instance, that the artificial intelligence, that the algorithm conducted a decision, give the decision, deliver that administrative decision to individuals. So we have a kind of a basic framework for this, but still we need the more clearer approach to environmental issues, to artificial intelligence that is implemented for this environmental well-being. So this should be ecocentric artificial intelligence, as a quote from the European Union document. Same applies to AI solution addressing areas of global concern, such as, for instance, the EU Sustainable Development Goals. So we should have a clear declaration, a clear statement on the green AI here. It's the right moment to do it. We have the big action on energy sector, and it should be combined, because AI first is used in energy sector, and I will, besides this, a few examples I just offered at the very beginning, I will give you a full list of different AI applications in energy sector. But also AI is used in different areas, in different fields of industry, of individual use. And here we should do it as soon as possible to put this high policy standards on green AI. In my opinion, and that's my clear policy statement, we shouldn't talk about development of artificial intelligence. We should speak about development of green artificial intelligence, or we include the green sustainable approach into artificial intelligence, and then we can speak about artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it's pointless because of the Paris Agreement, because of just transition, because of the climate crisis, and all things that are happening right now and happened before, yeah? And it led to this. It led to this situation. Yeah. As I said at the beginning, so this Japanese point of view, Japanese experience, we have here the Society 5.0, so this contribution to solution of global issues, SDGs, creation of this hydrogen society as it's declared in Japan, redefinition of smart city concepts, and the collection of energy data consumption, promotion of energy saving behavior. So these are the fields where AI, for instance, big data, can be applied. And it should be clearly stated that it's a tool that should be used by the policy makers. We observe what's in social media, for instance, where such companies like Facebook, with the help of Cambridge Analytics, yeah, or it was Oxford Analytics. Right now, I don't remember. Let's say those type of companies that offer those AI solutions, yeah, how they control the big data and what they do with big data and algorithms, why the governments shouldn't do it for the needs of the energy transition. If they do it, it should be clearly stated that it's a tool, it's a regulator tool, and that's why it should be controlled. Also, because of what was said at the very beginning, this energy democracy. Yeah. So if we have energy democracy, we should participate in it also with the help of control, which is a typical democratic tool. So in Japan, and this is the example from Japan, how the AI is applied in the very direct way in electricity sector. So in Japan, you have something that's called Super Ninten. It's an energy certificate that is given to operators of energy facilities that I mentioned them here. There's the short list, for instance, the Kawasaki refinery or this Sakai refinery. Yeah. So instead of a physical checkup where you have a person, an inspector, technical inspector, engineer checking this facility under the control of a government or different regulatory authority, you have different AI techniques applied that give you a possibility to keep the operation for 8 years without such a physical checkup. You have the certificate that this is done by the AI. So the artificial intelligence does the human job, and instead of the stopping your production, stopping the operation, losing money, losing energy, etc., you have the artificial intelligence that controls this process of checkup, of physical checkup, yeah, doing acting. It also comes from the fact that the society in Japan is aging, and those good engineers, let's say the people who did these controls for ages, are retiring. So to keep their knowledge, to keep their experience, the AI is substituting humans. And it's called the Super Nintendo. This is the certificate. And the very last information.
Professor, we are limited time. I ask you to finish.
Okay, as I said, that's the very last information. So this is this address I made in the forthcoming paper on green AI, as I said. So this should be green AI that gonna lead, and here you have a list of different AI application in energy and environment. I mentioned some of them at the very beginning. And that's the call for papers we ran together with Professor Ishiguro, is leading inventor in robotics in Japan. He created an Android which is called the most beautiful Android in the world. Yeah. So that's the call for papers. We gonna offer some of my books and other references. Yeah. So let's say, apart from the Star Wars, I have some credentials in this field. Yeah. And thank you very much for this possibility. And I'm gonna still stay here still with you for a while, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It's very interesting, linking the artificial intelligence within the future energy sector and to address the future of energy as a green and clean. And we will finish the presentations with Professor Benjamin Sakoval with the conference entitled Energy Justice and the Ethics of Low Carbon Transitions. Dr. Benjamin Sakoval is a professor Energy Policy at the Science Policy Research Unit, University of Sussex School of Business, UK, where he's also director of the Sussex Energy Group. Dr. Benjamin, you may start.
Thank you very much. And what a delight. What an exciting series of presentations, from green artificial intelligence to energy democracy to governance and pipelines. So I think this is fantastic. And I really appreciate you inviting me. I'll really try to stick to time because I know we're running a little bit late. And I was invited here to present on this really ambitious topic of justice and ethics, which connect really well with a lot of the other presenters, but is still a little bit distinct. So I think it's usually good to start by asking ourselves why we would even care about justice when we think about things like energy or electrons or barrels of oil or kilowatt hours. And it's because you may be surprised to learn that the connections between justice and energy extraction, energy production, energy use are pretty sobering. And so to give you one example, I mean, there are still underage miners for coal that are providing access to solid fuel in places like India, which still has hundreds of millions of people who aren't able to access the grid. Or closer to some of you in Europe, there are still people around Chernobyl in Belarus and Ukraine who are suffering from thyroid cancer. This shows you here on the right an 11-year-old who was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2008. So this is even decades after Chernobyl, because that was in 1986, which indicates a bit how the kind of the consequences of our energy choices can actually reflect generations and generations of people. Or finally, many of the material inputs and minerals we need for things like solar panels and fuel cells and the servers behind green artificial intelligence or electric vehicle batteries or mobile phones depend on lithium or cobalt or copper, which are also mined in sometimes very dangerous, very undemocratic, unhumanitarian ways. So energy gets implicated in all of these issues of equity and fairness and responsibility and accountability. And it becomes even more sobering when you start to do kind of reviews of the state of the field. We just published this year, where we reviewed 20 years of research in geography across 198 studies. And we looked at who's hurt, who's the most vulnerable group when you try to do things like climate protection, renewable energy, electric vehicles, et cetera. And you can see here, it's extremely frequent. Some of these losers, like non-human species, are affected 77% of the times. Local host communities are negatively impacted 76% of the times. And the list goes on: farmers, the poor, wage workers, fishers, students, the elderly, children, even connections with prostitution along things like pipeline corridors and hydroelectric dams. And it's quite sobering that if you actually specify indigenous groups, you can get really horrific tables like this, which show you around the world all of the indigenous groups or ethnic minorities who are being marginalized or dispossessed or displaced by pro-climate actions. These are the things we want: wind energy and smart grids and bioenergy and maybe nuclear power. And what's quite tragic is this table goes on and on and on. There's like more than 60 groups here under siege by multiple interventions that we're doing to try to decarbonize. So what this should hopefully convince some of you is something's amiss, right? Something's wrong with the way we are pursuing our energy technologies and decisions and policies. And hence enters energy justice, which is similar to energy sustainability, and it is definitely similar to energy democracy and just transitions, although it is meant to be a little bit different. My colleague Darren McCauley has done a nice positioning of energy justice here. So on the left, you can see how a focus on sustainability might mean carbon, and a focus on security might be availability, and a focus on poverty might be accessibility. But energy justice wants to look at them all. So it sits at the interstitials, right, of these different dimensions. Or on the right, disciplinarily, you can see how it's meant to sit at a nexus between political science and economics and environmental sciences. If you want a really kind term, this is a heterogeneous, like Latour was mentioned earlier, heterogeneous way of assembling energy research. If you want an unkind term, it's a very messy, complex way trying to capture energy justice concerns. What we've tried to do is kind of define energy justice as meaning the costs of energy, so the burdens, the externalities, and the harms, the hazards. But it's also about the benefits. How fairly are these new energy systems adopted? Who owns them? Is it community owned? Is it industry owned? And how accessible are the amenities that these low carbon innovations provide? Clean air, low carbon mobility, et cetera. It is about procedures and governance. This closely links to things like energy democracy and just transition. This is about things like free, prior, informed consent, community involvement, fairness and licensing, representation. And it's also about recognition and about vulnerable groups who may not deserve equal treatment. They may need special treatment because they've been earlier marginalized, or they have low adaptive capacity, or they're extremely heightened groups at risk, like the elderly or disabled peoples. We've applied energy justice in a bit of a different way than energy democracy or energy transitions work. We should have named these. One of them is called the tenets approach, where you take different tenets of justice, distribution, procedure, cosmopolitanism, and you apply them to something like electric vehicle adoption, and you get certain things are revealed. They come into focus under these different justice lenses. And my colleague Kirsten Jenkins has done a really nice job in her review, talking about how energy justice is kind of nifty because it allows you to transcend evaluation and description. We can identify issues of injustice and misrecognition, but also it's prescriptive and normative. We can then move to, well, what do we do about it? What is our burden? What is our responsibility as ethical actors to address the injustices? So it's one of these rare frameworks that transcends that kind of analytical normative divide or the descriptive prescriptive divide. The other way that people apply energy justice is by principles. And these are meant to be qualitative principles. They're meant to be equal. So all of them are equal consideration. And what's kind of sad is they trade off, unfortunately. But the idea is, as you embark on an energy decision or promote an energy technology, all of these principles should guide you at choosing what is just and right. And they're quite, comprehensive. We have issues of equity and future generations and responsibility, even things like resistance. It's our duty to resist evil, right, and injustices and oppose them when they come up. It's a long list of principles, which is largely why in a lot of research we don't apply them all. So in this study, we took 4 innovations in the UK: solar energy, EVs, energy service contracts. It's like ESCO approaches for energy, and low carbon heat. And we only chose 4 principles. That was enough. And you can see those 4 principles help reveal a mosaic of positive justice dimensions. That's the pluses, but also negative ones. And that's what's also tragic. No single any positive or only negative. It's about these vicious trade-offs. One of the final things before I conclude that's quite, I think, novel, and it's been very new, are we've seen the emergence of whole systems approaches to energy justice. This also is very different than, say, just transitions or energy democracy, which tend to be more community oriented, or they tend to look, within a country. These whole systems approaches try to unpack the hidden, embodied justices across the whole fuel cycle. And this is a really nice study from Noel Healy, Jenny Stevens, and Stephanie Malin, where they're talking about the sacrifice zones that emerge across the entire supply chain for coal. And these span all the way down into Colombia and South America, and all the way up to like West Virginia and Appalachia in sites of extraction and use in the United States. And their criticism is that the environmental community is way too focused on this box of environmental impact statements, right? We have EIAs and SEIAs that look at the wind farm, that look at the power plant, or maybe the house that's adopting solar. And in focusing there, which is okay, we miss or obscure all the other elements are hidden, like minerals extraction, or transport, or labor, low-wage manufacturers assembling solar, or afterlife issues of waste. And we have our own whole systems approach. We were inspired by Healy and have created this one, which is a bit more nuanced. It creates a matrix of injustices that transcends scales. So you've got those like at the local level, at the national level, at the supranational level, as well as the temporal stages of the technology: manufacturing, assembly, consumption, disposal. And you can take this framework, and we've operationalized it to look at 4 transitions in Europe: EVs in Norway, solar energy in Germany, smart meters in Great Britain, and let's see, which one did I miss? Nuclear power in France. And based on original mixed methods research, interviews with community members and experts and focus groups, we got these red injustices. So this came out of the material anytime people talked about this European transition affecting the world, like interfering with tar sands production in Canada, or diminishing the returns on coal mines in the US, or lithium extraction in Bolivia, or Congolese cobalt mining, or Australian LNG exports, or manufacturing supply chains in China, or profits of Gazprom in Russia. All of them are negatively affected by low carbon transitions in the yellow spaces. So what does this mean for us, right? What does this mean for those of us concerned about justice and fairness and international relations and governance? I think that, energy justice, it is different a little bit than these other concepts that you see. It is a neat conceptual tool that allows you to integrate different justice perspectives that are usually treated as distinct. There are lots of studies that are just about distributive justice. There are lots of studies that are just about procedural justice. There are lots of studies that are just about recognitional justice. And it's neat to combine them because you get a more complete lens to bring justice elements into focus. I think not for many of you, because you seem to be pretty much, similar to me, interested in the social side of energy. But for engineers and designers and natural scientists, it's a neat analytical tool to reveal how energy choices are political. Energy choices are about values as much as they're about technology. And it's also analytically about how you can reveal power relations and patterns of racism or patriarchy and how those get built into our energy infrastructure. So analytically, it's a very socio-technical tool. And maybe most importantly, it's a decision-making tool because it can help all of us, especially those principals, try to make more just decisions when we choose what home to buy, whether we buy a car or a bike, whether we upgrade or refurbish, where we invest our pensions, who we vote for in the next election, and what careers we take if we're students, right? So it can help all of us hopefully decide if we want to make more ethical choices. And then the final thing I think it does, and this is with a bit of caution, it's a powerful discursive tool, right? Energy justice is a vision. It is a imaginary. It is a discourse similar to elements of energy democracy. And that discourse has power. And we did this article here that identified the master frames of energy. And many of us know about things like technological optimism or things like energy security. But, justice is one of the frames. It is one of these meta frames that is very, very powerful at resonating with stakeholders. And that also means that justice rhetoric, because it's powerful, can be used by unjust people. So I think that on the one hand, it's a way of making energy more compelling for people, humanizing it. But on the other hand, we have to be aware that that's not captured by elites and other people who are using justice for their own ends. And perhaps the most important reason about energy justice isn't even pragmatic. It's more moral. And I really like this quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "Not until we create decent conditions and fair conditions for all can we actually consider ourselves to be more humanized." So in a way, energy justice is also about our civic duty as human beings to create a better world for all of us. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to the conference organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benjamin Sakoval, with this presentation, with very interesting about this energy justice as a concept, analytical, and a new concept to analyze energy. We have a few minutes for questions. I would like us all to be brief in your questions and say to whom the questions address. I know that we have some right questions here about the Nord Stream 2. Okay. Who wants to make a question? Okay. I have a question. So sorry. I'm the moderator, but I have a question. As we were thinking about the future and which type of energy should be developed in future for you, and we are thinking about democracy, justice, about technology, and we all of you speak about European Union. Okay, most of the cases are about the European Union. So, what type of energy should be developed in future?
I would say in any case, it should be renewable energy. We should make shift from these fossil fuels toward more renewable energy. And this could be different type of renewable energy that we can use, depending on the region, depending on the availability that we have. But what we need is renewable energy, more energy efficient technologies.
Yeah, I think there's also a very neat, I mean, there are two answers to this. Like the answer that I would also give, we did a meta-analysis of externalities of energy. There's some energy systems that harm a lot of people, like coal or waste to energy. There are some that are in the middle, like nuclear and hydro and natural gas. And there are some that are very benign, like solar and efficiency and wind and geothermal. That would be my personal take, but I also take many of the comments and points about democracy that it's like up to communities. So the answer there will depend on what the communities want. There could be communities in India that are very coal centered where there's still a need for coal use, or communities that have oil there, they need that for their development. So I think that while globally we need decarbonization, some local communities may very well need to use fossil fuels to meet their equity concerns.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on that. I agree with both what was just said. I think that there's a lot of opportunity as renewables come online to do better than what we have in the past with our traditionally fossil fuel energy sources. But that said, there's just this assumption that we can do renewables democratically, and that's, it's not limited to just renewables. But if we look at climate change and other factors, and just kind of running out of fossil fuels are not renewable. So our hand is kind of being forced in a way of making this transition, but we have to do it thoughtfully and strategically. We can't make assumptions that this transition is going to be better for society and the environment. That has to be navigated carefully, and no assumptions should be made. So
if I could just add to this too, Andrea makes a great point. And we often forget that the entire colonialist project of the 17 and 1800s was powered by renewable energy. It was sail ships and hydropower and other things. And so it's, renewables don't always go hand in hand with equity and democracy.
We have some questions right by the students. One of the questions about André. He make sensitizations regarding the Nord Stream 2. And he asked, do you think that Nord Stream 2 pipeline can or will foster Russian revisionism towards Europe? This question was to Professor Andrea.
So I don't know how well I can field this question other than, the United States it's been an interesting adventure, I would say, the last 4+ years of what we've been experiencing in kind of this nationalism, just thinking about US only in regards to energy system, and this really constant rhetoric of energy dominance, and US first rhetoric that was coming from our previous administration, and now kind of entering back into the global scene in regards to climate change and also in regards to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline of how does, and I can only speak from the US context here, but how do we negotiate this when relationship damages had occurred with some European countries and the US trying to reestablish those connections and alliances while also wanting to, appropriately chastise efforts on behalf of Russia and current actions. So really, this is like not just about energy. This is really about power, global power dynamics. And so that's all I can really speak to in regards to that. But yeah, this is an extremely sensitive topic. And from what I understand, that resource has value, and it's definitely natural gas is still a big part of our system, but is that needed? I'm not sure. So I don't know. I would love to hear other perspectives, especially Europeans' perspectives on this.
I don't know if anyone would complete this question.
Yeah, as a Polish scholar, let's say I have a very strict approach towards this incentive. It's a policy-driven incentive. In my opinion, it's a clear policy failure. We have enough gas in Europe. This pipeline skips Ukraine. It's just using the Russian power. And what's interesting, because both previous and the current U.S. administration is rather against this incentive. The previous administration was very clear, but also this administration also uses these arguments. And of course, at the end of the day, it's a discussion with Germany, because it's just a German incentive. Of course, German speaks that it's just a business as usual, etc. But okay, but business as usual, where we have a war in Europe, in Ukraine, and those tensions and those military drills, etc., where this incentive is again it's a monopolization of gas sector in Europe. And again, this is just take a look at California, the approach to gas there. That what we're gonna do with gas right now can be, and it will be a loop to the previous question, can be a call of the future. Gas right now can be a call of the future. In 10 years, we can have the same issue of gas that we have right now. So why we should give this resource a priority, especially where we have Nord Stream 1, where we have a US LNG coming to Europe via many gateways, where we have partners in Azerbaijan and other countries that can deliver it. Yeah, so that's my opinion. It's an energy policy failure. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if anyone wants to say something about these issues, or because I have another questions from Andrea. And Dr. Sokowal, Danielle, Interest, I've been thinking about how energy democracy almost seems like a privilege of the global north, linking to energy justice. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, great question. And it can be seen as kind of neo-colonialist to promote notions of democracy or even justice in societies. Rawls struggle with this to say that you shouldn't force illiberal societies to adopt liberal principles. So I think that energy democracy could still work well in communities that are democratic, but in communities that aren't, there is this question of, well, what do you do in authoritarian regimes or dictatorships, of which there are still many around the world. I think one of the things that we've explored a little bit, we have a paper on New Frontiers in energy justice work, and the first thing we say is we need to get a better handle on non-Western, non-Northern theories of justice. So this things like Ubuntu in South Africa, or Confucianism or Buddhism in Asia, or perspectives from indigenous communities. All of them have equal merit, along with utilitarianism and human rights, and other notions, polluter pays principle of justice that we kind of are more commonly engaged with. And some of these may work very well in some of these communities in the global South. The other thing, which is also interesting, the second recommendation, is we need theories of justice that help handle non-human species. Because even in my presentation, right, my first 3 slides were people. because we're humans, we like humans, but grappling with environmental ethics and planetary health, that is a very different kettle of fish. And remember, in my table of victims of energy injustice, non-human species are at the top. So what do we then do to get a better grounded environmental ethics to complement also our non-Western theories?
Yeah, and just to add to that, we've been thinking about that a lot too, of the non-human or the other than human, and have been writing in that area. So I think we're still trying to explore that, of thinking about that in regards to justice, participation, and power, and how to, kind of think about the more than human within those contexts. So I love that you brought that up.
Okay, I don't know if anyone wants to speak about these issues.
Can I just add a couple of thoughts? I think that what we have been saying suggests that the future of energy also intersects very strongly with communication, my own disciplinary field, and so with processes of debate, with discussion that is inclusive, and we can of course have a series of axes here of inclusion, from scales and countries and communities to issues of values, and including values that are often suppressed, like biospheric ones, biocentric approaches, like some speakers were suggesting. And it is really critical that that at the times that we are making decisions that will create path dependencies and implications for probably many generations, we really consider very carefully, as Dr. Feldbosch Parker said at some point, navigate very thoughtfully this whole process, and really try to, create spaces and opportunities for debate that are quite plural, that of course we have at some point to go past the debate and make decisions, but those decisions should at least be made after careful consideration of alternatives, and those alternatives should be really quite wide, and not just preset by a specific set of actors and worldviews and interests. So I'm also very keen on the kinds of approaches that are put forth by people working along Chantal Mouffe's views that have been already referred here, and the need to repoliticize these debates, and in the sense of really bringing to the fore the different views, the issues of power that are really cutting across all of this. And I think there's some hopes in the sense of all these developments of young people, the climate movement, the multiple civil disobedience movements, really kind of setting new positions and making new points about the very, very important issues that are at stake. All for democracy, accountability, and inclusivity here.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to finish the panel and close this panel. It was very, without doubt, very interesting conference that presents several perspectives on the future of energy, and we could certainly continue to do many questions. However, we are limit of time. I thank you all for your presentations. I suggest that if anyone more questions, please send to the organization, and the organization will forward to you if you agree. And thank you for all. The panel is closed. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.